I'm home, baby. Spoiler alert, this is an awesome phone. But I've got a couple of complaints. Technically, one of them's totally subjective, but in my mind, they're both facts. Facts. Now, first off, aside from this new super weird square camera grid trend we're getting into, I really like this extra clean design with those softly curved matte black sides, which look and feel awesome. And the matte finish on the back of the white and orange models also looks and feels awesome. But as a side bonus, makes fingerprints almost completely invisible compared to all those other phones these days with insanely reflective finishes. That said, there is a black option, and it is glossy and reflective as balls. And like a lot of people, I really think they should have murdered it out with matte black. They would have sold a ton. But hey, still looks awesome, as long as you don't touch it. Now, one thing that caught my eye right away was the flat display. Personally, I prefer flat displays for two reasons. One, they're way easier to find and fit screen protectors without the edges lifting up after a couple of days. And two, you get a lot less false positive touches, which helps prevent me from punching myself in the face out of frustration. And you know what? While we're on the topic, the display looks incredible. Yeah, we've got that huge mongoloid looking forehead above it because of all these new sensors it's packing, but I've slowly gotten used to it. Still doesn't mean I like it though. Out of the 3 image profiles it's got, I prefer the boosted mode for a little more punch, and I do mean little. It's like Salt Bae walked up and just sprinkled the tiniest amount of extra saturation. But like watching HDR content on that 1440p display is just nuts. I can't believe we can get this level of image quality from a bloody smartphone. But beyond all that, Google gave us a 90Hz display, which has been really nice with overall usage, but more specifically with scrolling. And for those of you who use a smartphone, which is like all of you, you've probably noticed there's a fair bit of scrolling involved. Like I went from the OnePlus 7 Pro to the iPhone 11, and oh my god, was it hard for me to scroll through apps without getting a little motion sickness. But then again, maybe I'm just an oversensitive pansy. Now, it's not running at 90 Hz all the time because it's adaptive, but for the vast majority of the time, at least for me, I can tell it's running at 90. If you did want to run at 90 Hz all the time, there's an option in developer settings that you can enable, but then you can expect a massive hit to battery life. Now, the stereo speakers aren't both front firing anymore. Now we've got the typical earpiece speaker and then the second one on the bottom. I've always preferred front firing speakers, but luckily this orientation hasn't affected the audio quality. They get loud, like really loud, and they sound just as full and detailed as before. Now, thanks to all those new fancy sensors and that airplane runway sized forehead, we get new features like Face Unlock. And it works really, really well. It doesn't work on angles like the iPhone does, but in my experience, straight on, it's been both slightly faster and more consistently accurate. I also really like that we got the option to choose between unlocking straight into the phone or just to the lock screen, which are options the iPhone doesn't give us. And with Project Sully now on the new Pixels, we get air gestures, or motion sense as Google calls it. So for example, if you reach to grab the phone, it'll turn the display on. You can swipe to skip songs back and forth, snooze alarms, and silence incoming calls. Now, I've watched and read a lot of reviews where motion sense just straight up doesn't work for some people and only half works for others. For me, it's been working flawlessly, and it's been especially awesome to use while I have it docked in the car when I'm driving and streaming music. No looking for buttons to tap, just a simple swipe without needing to take my eyes off the road. A couple other cool features that come with the new Pixels is live caption and live transcribe, which is outfitted in a new voice recording app. Live caption can be enabled by tapping the icon next to the volume slider, so when you're watching a video, for example, it'll caption everything spoken. And then live transcribe will transcribe your speech into text almost as fast as you can say the words, and then indexes those words so you can search for them later if you needed to reference certain parts of your transcription. I can see this being incredibly useful for students, people in meetings, or in my case, when I don't want to listen to my wife yap away while I'm watching one of my shows. And if she asks if I was listening, I can just quickly reference her entire rant right from my phone. Isn't technology amazing? Now, the Pixel's performance with only 6 gigs of RAM and the Snapdragon 855 is something I know a lot of us were curious about, considering Pixel phones have always had fairly underwhelming hardware specs compared to other modern flagship phones. But personally, I haven't had any issues with mine, and with that 90Hz display, it's been smooth sailing so far. All right, cameras. Now on the front, we've got an 8 megapixel I'm totally into myself camera, and on the back, Google gave us a 12 megapixel standard almost wide angle at 28mm and a 16 megapixel telephoto with a 2x optical zoom. And that's the camera sparking some online debate. Remember at the start of the video when I said I've got a couple of complaints? Well, I fall into the camp of people who prefer an ultra wide over a telephoto on phones, especially when that telephoto is only a 2x zoom. Also, they're just better, and that's fact number 1. But it is what it is, and it's not going anywhere. Until hopefully next year. Anyways, after spending probably too much time with the cameras, I didn't really notice any change in dynamic range, but it's still just as excellent as ever. Contrast and sharpness look great, and most of the time colors looked really good, but that new intelligent auto white balance did screw up some shots every so often, and sometimes made my skin look almost gray. But like I said, most of the time colors look great, and when it gets it right, skin tones look perfect. Portrait mode did really well too. I'm still seeing some edge detection issues, but they're much smaller and happen less often than before. Anyways, the telephoto did well. I mean, yeah, it takes good photos, but with only 2x optical zoom, I'm just not convinced that it wouldn't have been a better idea to stick an ultra wide on there instead and then just use the Pixel Super Res zoom feature if we need a closer shot. Now, I wasn't able to get any shots of the stars with the new astrophotography mode, which kicks in automatically if it's dark enough when you're using night sight, because it's been completely overcast nights lately, but I was able to use it in some areas, and the results were pretty crazy. And night sight alone took some amazing shots. In fact, if a dark scene's lit just right, the camera's good enough that just regular photos looked awesome. But yeah, night sight really made some scenes pop and created some awesome looking shots. Alright, time for not so subjective fact number 2. Battery life's pretty average. 3700 milliamp hours isn't small, but with the 90Hz 1440p display, you really do need a bit more, especially if you spend a lot of time in bright conditions where you'll be cranking up that display. With my average usage, I can get through the day, but without much to spare at night. With heavy usage, around evening time, it's as dead as Macaulay Culkin's career, and if I wanted to drag out the battery life a bit more, I'd have to turn off all the features that make the new Pixel, well, the new Pixel. But they did fix wireless charging, so now you can fast charge at up to 11 watts on wireless chargers other than the Pixel stand. So that's nice. And we do still get wired fast charging with the rapid charger in the box, but it's also still limited to 18 watts, which isn't terrible by any means, but when we're seeing phones from OnePlus, Huawei, and others with chargers that can output way more, have bigger batteries, more RAM, the latest CPU, brighter displays, and come with at least better telephoto cameras in addition to ultra-wide cameras, it's a bit of a harder sell, you know? But I guess that's the thing, you know, Pixel phones are all about the user experience, not the hardware specs race. And on the Pixel 4 XL, my experience has been as awesome as skinny dipping in a warm lake when there's no one around. Very self-conscious. But I think that does it for this one. I really hope you liked the video. If you did, show me some love with that like button. Subscribe if you're new to my stuff, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram to see what I'm up to next. But thanks, as always, for watching, and I'll talk to y'all in the next one. Cheers.